How do we learn to let go? It's a deceptively simple question. One that at first seems too straightforward, too benign to be the harbinger of the most profound shift a person can make. But beneath that question, like the turbulence beneath a river's surface, lies something more. It's to challenge the very nature of self, of control, of identity.
Have you ever heard Data define friendship?
No.
How did he put it? As I experience certain sensory input patterns, my mental pathways become accustomed to them. Their inputs eventually are anticipated and even missed when absent.
It's just that our mental pathways have become accustomed to your sensory input patterns. I understand. I am also fond of you, Commander. And you as well, Counselor.
These patterns of experience, these ideas, relationships, beliefs, they burrow into us, becoming part of the circuitry of our mind. And we miss them when they're gone. There's a need to cling to these things as we're being pulled along this river of existence. It's this desperate clawing grasp to hold on to anything solid rather than be swept forward into the terrifyingly unknown future that waits for us. But I think the real question here is, what exactly is doing the clinging? So what is this me that I imagine doing the clinging? And what am I so desperate to hold on to? Is it my ego? The story I'm telling myself about who I am? Or some person? Or place? Or thing that seemed to mean so much for a time? The more I sit with these questions, the more the boundaries start to dissolve. And I start to realize that there is no me, not in the way that I always thought there was. Yeah. Consider for a moment the ship of Theseus. It's this thought experiment where the ship sets sail, and over time, parts wear out. The decks need to be replaced. The sails eventually need to be replaced. Over time, every part of the ship has to be replaced. So by the time it comes back to port, is it still the same ship? So at first my instinct was to say yes. It's the pattern that matters, not the parts. It's the arrangement of the materials, not the materials itself that define identity. But over time, even the pattern changes. Over time, even the most consistent mind shifts in ways imperceptible until we look back and realize who I am today is not who I was yesterday. And neither will I be the same tomorrow. So really, there's no clear, fixed identity that I could cling to if I wanted. The self's not some static entity, it's a process. It's a point of perspective and motion. And attachment is nothing more than the mind's futile attempt to resist the... Think of the transporters in Star Trek. Every episode, characters are torn apart atom by atom, only to be reassembled with different atoms elsewhere. But the pattern, the mind, remains intact. And we see a similar narrative in Altered Carbon, where bodies are just sleeves and persistent identity is stored on a cortical stack, a device that can move between interchangeable bodies. The persistence of identity, the configuration itself stays the same, and so we think of the same person, say the pattern itself is over time, even the pattern unravels. It's the same with our identities. The me that clings to these sensory patterns, it's little more than flotsam, temporary configuration of matter and energy drifting in the current of time.
And yet we fight. We fight so desperately to control, to cling to the things that we believe define us, but in so doing, we mistake this fragile ego bit of flotsam for the river itself. We act as though we're this minuscule piece trying to stay afloat, but that current that carries us forward, that erodes all things, it's not separate from us. It is us. So, to let go is to recognize this truth. The river does not drag us along as a foreign force, indifferent to our struggles. It is who we are in motion. The ego, the clinging, grabbing self, it's just a ripple on the surface. It's unaware that it belongs to something so much greater. So letting go is not an act of surrender to an external power. It's the realization that there's no separation between us and the flow of life itself. Our ego clings to the banks of the river, fighting to define itself by its attachments. But they're just illusions, just momentary glimpses of solidity in a fluid world. The current will always erode them, just as it erodes the false belief boundaries we imagine between ourselves and everything else. So how do we learn to let go then? Well, first we have to understand that there's nothing solid to hold on to. Not even the self. The me we defend so fiercely. It's a process, a ripple, not a rock. And the river that seems to drag us toward an unknown future, it's not an external force. It's the flow of our own existence. We're not being carried by it. We are it. So letting go, then it's not about giving up. It's about embracing the flow, trusting that the river that's carried us this far, that it'll continue to do so. So at the end of the day, attachment is the fear of losing something we never truly possessed. And learning to let go is just learning to trust that the river knows where it's going. And we just have to stop clinging and let it take us there.